Welcome everybody. ጤና ይስጥልኝ ለተመልካቾቻችን. Today we are back with another episode. I know we've been gone for a minute, but we are back and we're here with a special edition of Tarik podcast, and we're here welcoming a special guest, Dr. Haile Larebo. He is an esteemed professor and historian on a lot of different subjects, specifically on Ethiopian history, and we're here to ask him a lot of some questions on Ethiopian history for our viewers. First of all, Professor Larebo, thank you so much for being here. We're really grateful for to have you here with us. So thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It is quite encouraging to have such young people interested in Ethiopian history. I'm very, very grateful for being invited. Thank you very much.
Of course, we're really grateful. I can't even explain. So first of all, can you just explain to us, like, who are you? Who is Professor Larebo? And what can you introduce yourself to us and some of the work that you have done here?
Oh, there is very little to tell about myself. I come from very humble origin. I was born in what is now today the southern nations and nationalities, what you call regional state, which is where is found Kambata. And I was born in Kambata. I don't know my birth date, unfortunately. Because in those days there were no any recording or registrations, and so there were no schools, there is no clinics, there were no hospitals. The first time I saw a car was, I think, when I was almost 8 years old or something like that. When I saw the car, I have to escape because it was Italia Leoncina, very old with a lot of smoke whenever you touch the gas. So I have to escape because I thought he's going to catch me and burn me. And my uncle has to run because I have to go to Addis Ababa, but I was almost missing the bus because of that. So that is just to describe where I come from. So after that, I was born immediately after I think I may be 5 or 6 years old. I lost all my parents and my sister. Then whatever is left after that, it is a life of adventure, zigzag, travel, hardship, and practically it is a struggle. Life was a struggle, but fortunately enough, I was able to go to Italy to get my BA and MA in philosophy and divinity, then to London to do MPhil, which is almost in this country's PhD level, then PhD in African history. So it is very tortuous life. It is hard to describe it. And after that, after I finished, it was in my days, it was very difficult to find a job in England. England was fundamentally racist society. And so I have to look for, I couldn't go back to Ethiopia because it was under the military rule. And so what I have been advised is your hope is the United States. So I applied to the United States. I competed with substantial number of people, and I got my first job in history teaching. Then at the moment I'm working at Morehouse College, where I'm teaching world history and African history as well as American history. So in terms of publications, I have published extensively. My first book is by one of the rare publishers of rare academic work, Clarendon Press of Oxford University Press, and won that year's the best book in its field. And also it is recommended as a book to be consultative for whoever wants to do archival work. After that, of course, I have written in church history in Ethiopian Orthodox Church, a couple of articles, then a couple of other articles in Italian colonialism. And a lot of, recently I realized that the Ethiopians really, I have to dedicate myself to educate Ethiopian public. So I started to use social media, and I write from time to time on a very critical issues such as Ethiopian history, personalities, and other relevant matters. So that is, I think, what you wanted to know about me. Is there anything specific? I'm more than happy to explain.
No, you explained it quite well. We're really grateful to have someone like you, someone in our community that can really talk about our history like that to our community, especially in an era where it's often been subverted for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of the youth don't have a much neither interest, or if they do, it's not in accordance to the way that the values that we were raised up in. So thank you for that. Yeah, for sure. So our next question is, can you explain that you were Kambata, and can you explain a little bit about the origins of the Kambata people? Who are the Kambata people, and what their significance is to Ethiopian history and to Ethiopia as a whole?
Today, Ethiopia is divided in ethnic groups. Unfortunately, that is a sad situation we find ourselves. And the people are competing. My ethnic group is more important, larger, greater. It played historical significance in Ethiopian history or whatever. So practically, it is very sad. But the situation is Kambata actually in Ethiopian history played very significant role. It appears for the first time in Ethiopian history under as Yisak in 1400, and for the first time it is mentioned alongside Somalia and other Ethiopian provinces as the most important provinces that raises horses, and combatants are uniquely specialized in horse racing. And after that, it played a very major role in Ethiopian history. And the most significant was that when in Ethiopian history, they call him invader or whatever it is. But for me, it is simply a rival competitor for power, like Emperor Johannes or Emperor Theodros. When Grany invaded or attacked in the central government and they defeated Libna Dengel, Ethiopia was practically in a chaos. So we are going, you can show that a picture in number, I'm sorry, I should have prepared that. You can see that in number.
Which page?
You can show the Solomonian Mangist. You can see Solomonian Mangist.
This one, right?
The Solomon, yeah, that one. So you can see that says meeting is being recorded. So that is, you can see that the Ethiopia of the Aksumites were even larger than that, because it goes beyond the Red Sea. It conquered most of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and also according to the Adulis throne, it is known as Adulis throne simply because it has got a shape of throne. It is a statue, a monument where the king describes his greatest conquest. It goes to the boundaries of Egypt, so practically on the northern side. So this is the Solomon, what you call the Aksumite Empire. Many people say, no, this is completely does not reflect the what do you call the real situation, but that is what is described in the documentation. The next one, if you can go to the next one. I don't see the next one. Yeah, it is it. This is Muhammad Granyo Ahmed Ibn Ibrahim Al-Ghazi. So practically this is what he did. He started from the east. So he conquered most of Ethiopia. And as a result of that, there was some sort of chaos. But after Muhammad Granyo was defeated, his successor again invaded or attempted to conquer the central, to capture the central government power. And it was a Kambata general who was sent to attack Harar, and he destroyed the city of Harar and killed the ruler of Harar. So practically what we say is in terms of competition for power and ascendancy, Kambata played a major role. That general's name was Ras Hamelmal. So, and also Kambata is, unlike other Ethiopian societies, is highly stratified society. There are three groups: the nobles or the ruling class, whose position was strengthened by the Ras Hamelmal, who came from Gondar. That is what they say. And these ruling class are known as Oyata. And then the second is a nobleman who went with this ruling class, known as Gulba, who come from Shawa. And then in the commoners, the general commoners, now known as Kontoma, who come from a different part of southern Ethiopia, largely Sidama, Deresa, and the other part. Then finally, there are the craftsmen, normally the tanners, the potters, the blacksmiths. So then in the bottom of them, there are slaves. Kambata society doesn't have a lot of slaves, so practically they are not well known in enslaving other people. So it's very rare to find in Kambata slaves. So it is a highly stratified society and a highly developed sense of what we call a nationalism, as well as a sense of identity. But it is, you can call Kambata as a melting pot, a little Ethiopia, because people come from different parts of the world, from the different part of Ethiopia. They are Gojamis, Shawans, Sadamas, Walaitas, Tigrians. There are about 100, at least 120 subclans, clans and subclans. And so practically they reflect the Ethiopia, they mirror the real Ethiopia. So even though the Kambata language is common to all those who escaped persecution, who wanted some sort of prominence in the society, those who are oriented or what do you call ambitious people, all of them really took refuge in Kambata. So it is very, very mixed up society. And the legal system is highly developed. Actually, in 1970s, many researchers were saying instead of looking for European legal system, why we don't study the Kambata system and apply it to the rest of Ethiopia. And so there are Oromos and also there is no an ethnic group in Ethiopia which is not in Kambata. But the general name given to that is Kambata because there is this legendary narrative which says in 1600, between 1600 and 1500, the Kambata society established itself some sort of hierarchical structure, what you call confederacy. The confederacy is the 7 group of ethnic groups, or really must be ethnic groups, structured themselves according to their abilities, professions, what you got based on the achievements. So these 7 groups are really the foundation of Kambata society. It is now that agreement was everyone accepted the positions that was given because they were agreed on some sort of competition. Then those 7 really are the foundation of Kambata. Everyone who joins was given land by this 7 group or the leader of the 7 group, and has been what you call allocated and become part of the Kambata society. So it is a very highly developed consciousness as well as organization. So this is Kambata. And for example, those who come from Oromo area are now in Gabara. Gabara practically means those Kambata people who have been assimilated by the Oromos in Arusi region, because until 1970s, between 75 and 80% of the Arusi population is Kambata and Hadia, a substantial number also of Gurage. So those are Gavara called. There are Oyata who come from the northern regions. Then there are a lot of them, all of them keeping the areas from where they came in. For example, there is Omoshogora. Omoshogora means those who came crossing the Omo River. So that is how the Kambata society is. So as I said, when they were cut off because of the Oromo migration, they were cut off from the central government, and until then they were Christians, because there are a lot of relics and institutions they kept, but eventually Christianity was lost, but they have never became adopted another religion beyond the syncretization of the surrounding areas religion plus Christianity. And that Christianity, and they developed their own system of government, monarchy, and this monarchy in 1800 was becoming very powerful when Menelik reunified the country, practically the golden age of Kambata. Many say that the horse in Menelik's statue in Addis Ababa, you can see that Menelik was riding, was really the horse of the Kambata king, Dilbeto, because as I say, the Kambatans are well known in horse racing. So Oromos also are claiming that it must be Oromo horse. But before that, I think there is some sort of record that it was really Dilbeto's horse. Dilbeto was killed during the battle, in the battle, and as a result of that, the Kambata came under the administration of the central government, and re-Christianization took place. But unfortunately, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church was not very effective. As a result of that, Protestants and Catholics took over, and the majority of the population is either Protestant or Catholic, and very few Ethiopian Orthodox, because Ethiopian Orthodox, even though the population is Orthodox originally, did not play a major role. I think that gives you some picture of Kambata. So as I said, a melting pot of Ethiopian society. For example, you can show that picture of Emperor Haile Selassie. Next one, I think.
Yeah, before we get into it, we wanted to progress more. We can move forward more effectively and efficiently. Can you talk a bit about, you brought up some of the other ethnic groups and the other kingdoms in Ethiopia alongside the Kambata. Can you talk a little bit about them and how they've been integrated into the society, Ethiopian society or the empire, and with the North, even like what their connections are with the North, such as the Hadia, the Kafa, and the other groups you mentioned?
Yeah, as you can see, if you can go back to the map, the first map where it says the Solomonic Empire, this map, a little bit, the previous one. No, not the previous one. Not that, this one. If you can see that this is Ethiopian, what we call, some people call it empire, but I call it Ethiopian state. Empire has got different meaning. As you can see, it includes Somalia, it goes as far as Azania. Azania is the present-day Kenya. So what Granye did is practically it wanted, actually Granye created even larger Ethiopian political entity because it pushed into Sudan area. Beyond, you can see that the color changes. It is no longer what you call red or yellow, red. And so when this was disintegrated, Ethiopian central government became weakened because it was immediately followed by the Oromos. Even though Ethiopian government tried to recover those territories lost, it was, for example, you can show the next picture, which was, I think, picture, I don't know where it is. I don't see it. If you go, so you can see this picture is Ibrahim, what they call Grany. So Grany conquered most of the territory. There was massive population movement. Many Christians became Muslims, and later on, of course, many Muslims are going to be Christians. Then Grany's invasion was followed by Oromo migration. Then if you go to the next one, to the next picture, this one. So practically, this is the greatest Ethiopian population migration, which followed the Grany and Oromo migration. So the Oromos themselves are involved in this great migration. We can see Somalis are going to migrate. Who was in the north, go to the south. Who was in the south, go to the north. So practically, Ethiopia has been the country of massive migration. And I call it really, it is a creation of different societies, one moving to the north, one the other moving to the south. For example, Aksumites moved from the north to the south. Then the Agos moved from the, what do you call, the center to the south and the north. Then the Grany moved from the east. The Solomonite dynasty, I'm sorry, moved from the west, from central west. And then the Somalis moved from the east. Then the Oromos moved from the south. So practically it is a movement of population, which is going to steer the Ethiopian society. So in one word, the Ethiopian society, so what the Emperor Menelik did is what has been decentralized, and after the Oromo migration and the Grany uprising, what you call the Grany conquest or invasion, they call it the word invasion. What Emperors Menelik, Theodros, Johannes, and the Afar and the Gojamis did is really to bring back that unity which was lost during those 200 years. So there wasn't any new territory conquered. What actually happened is most of substantial amount of the territory was lost. As you can see, the Somalia is no longer with Ethiopia, and substantial part of Sudan is no longer with Ethiopia. Eritrea was no longer with Eritrea. So the Ethiopian migration was steered out of, as a result of the external conquest. Whenever a foreign invader came, Ethiopians unified and created unity and came together, or internal migration. So practically that is what happens. There wasn't really any conquest. This, what these intellectuals of what they call is out of this 18th and 1960s student movement as Amara conquest. As you can see, the Amara conquest, if you can show the picture of Emperor Haile Selassie, what makes him Amara, you can see that from his mother's side, from his father's side. How many ethnic groups were involved there? There are a lot of ethnic groups. Emperor Haile Selassie is hardly Amara, he is hardly Christian, because on the mother's side, he comes from Muslims, and it's from, so his grandmother, practically, she is Silte, okay? Then she's married Yeju Muslim, which is Oromos and half Oromos. Yejus are really a melting pot of Ethiopia, like Kambata itself. So then she was married to Warelu Muslim. Then she was married to Ras Mekonnen. Ras Mekonnen was, on the other hand, is half Oromo, half what do you call Shawa practically means a melting pot, another melting pot. So how do you define that Emperor Haile Selassie? Was he Christian? Of course he's Christian, because the central government's belief system is the core value of the central government is Christianity, but that doesn't mean it is persecuting other religions. Ethiopia is really a big, what do you call, a big baobab under which all these religions, ethnic groups, languages come together. So even though the baobab has got its own kind of branches and what do you call roots. So that is what Ethiopian society is. That is what Menelik did. And many people say that the unification happened with Menelik. That is completely wrong, simply because the process started very, very long time ago. Fortunately, I don't see the, if you see picture 7, first reunification attempt, here you are. Yeah, that one, the first one. This one, no, first reunion. Can you see that? After, no, that picture. Can you keep that picture?
Which picture?
I'm sorry, the map, the first map. First reunification attempt. That one.
This one?
Oh, yeah, that one. You can see that the Sersa Dingel tried to reconstitute Ethiopian, the pre-Grand Ethiopia. Unfortunately, we couldn't, because the government, the central government, so weak, and immediately after that, there was civil war within the monarchy because of competition for power between the nobility. They didn't want monarchy. They wanted to create some sort of regional feudal system. As a result of that, with Oromo support, Susinius emerged as powerful, but his son created Gondar, and the Gondar wasn't an appropriate place to move as in the past, because in the past, this is huge area. Imagine Ethiopia of that time was almost 6 times of England, or 5 times of Italy. So in order to administer that size of the government, to have a city in the far west was really not ideal, because the previous rulers have got this roving town. A roving town means the king moves with his army from one place to another, normally in the south, located in the south. And as a result of that, whenever there is some sort of uprising, he moved from south to west, from east to north. So, but with Gondar, the establishment of Gondar, this was not possible, because they created a completely different kind of city-based administration. But so Sersa Dingel at least tried, but it was not sustained by the following rulers. Then what happened is, if you go to the next one, the picture is, I think that is this picture. Unification happened in 3 stages. First is Tewodros, who wanted to bring back the northern provinces. And this was stimulated, not because Tewodros wanted to unify, simply because there was an external attack. the Turks, the Egyptian, and the British were attacking. So practically Theodorus realized in order to keep the glory of Ethiopia, the past Ethiopia, the country has to be unified. Then Theodorus was not successful simply because the European, he wanted from the Europeans armaments, weapons, and technology, but the Europeans were sending missionaries. So he said, what he said is, when Europeans want to occupy one's country, first they send missionaries, then they followed up with ambassadors in order to protect their missionaries. Then they follow with army in order to protect their consuls. I am not the Raj of India. I would like to face your missionaries first. So based on that approach, what he did is imprisoned the missionaries, and as a result of that, he was attacked by the British. So the idea of creating a unified centrally governed Ethiopia was not dead, because it was followed by successors of Theodros, which was Ioannis on one hand, Tekle Haymanot on the other. Then the two of them unified. Ioannis practically saved the country from the external enemies, largely the Egyptians and the Turks, and Tekle Haymanot also from the Sudanese. And finally, Menelik, since the Europeans were attacking and conquering the southern part of Africa before southern part of Ethiopia, he wanted to stop that these countries taking part of Ethiopia. Practically, he said when he wrote the letter to the British and to the European powers, look, you come from overseas and are taking a country that does not belong to you. And he gave the territory of the ancient Ethiopia. So Ioannis and Ioannis and Menelik agree on one thing. The countries which they unified as Ethiopia is simply losing substantial part to the European power. So practically that unity was completed by Menelik, but he didn't conquer new territories. He simply sacrificed substantial part of territory in order to protect Ethiopia and provide a buffer zone to the peaceful coexistence of Ethiopians. So the idea that Menelik conquers the southern regions, that is really 1960s student movement creation. And because they say that Ethiopia is a recent invention, it is a colonial empire masquerading as a nation state, but it is dominated by one ethnic group known as Amara. Other ethnicities are under oppression. This is really very, very what you call very poor analysis, because as you can see, no ethnic group, if you can go to the next picture, let me see, I think it is in the next one. Now, Theodros brought core state. The core state is Tigray, Gojam, and Ioannis and Ras Alula defended Ethiopia from the external enemies like the Egyptians, the Sudanese, and the Italians. Then Tekle Haymanot and Ras Dereso from the Sudanese, Menelik and Ras Govena from the British and the French. As you can see, Ioannis is not Amara, Ras Alula is not Amara, Tekle Haymanot maybe Amara if you call Gojamese Amara, because Gojam speak Amharic now, but they are Agao, so we shouldn't forget that. Ras Dereso is definitely an Agao man. Menelik, you can call him Amara because he speaks Amharic, but in his, as you can see, his mother is not Amara, definitely. And Ras Govena, everybody knows that he is not Amara. Menelik and Ras Mekonnen, who pacifies the southern part of eastern part of the country, is not definitely Amara. So he's a combination of many ethnic groups. So if you can see the next one, let me see, I think you can see that external enemies attacking. So that is why the unification happened. You can see those lines from different part of the borders trying to attack Ethiopia. So Ethiopia is simply responding to those attacks. And so there wasn't, what I wanted to say is really there wasn't any kind of this conquest. Simply it is rescuing Ethiopia, saving Ethiopia from external threats, and it brings the unity that existed years before in Ethiopian history. I think that answers your question, but through other points, I think when we come back, I'll go through other points too. So,
sure, yeah, definitely. Thank you. That was very informative. Thank you so much for that. We definitely appreciate that, and I've definitely learned a couple of things from me myself. So my next question is, how can you describe, how would you describe the relationship with the past Ethiopian emperors, the Central Ethiopian or like the Christian emperors, and the rulers of the other kingdoms of the other people? How would you describe their relationship and the relationship to the state? Did they get along oftentimes? Did they often rebel? Like how did that, how was the relationship basically? How did it differentiate?
the central government vis-a-vis the regional states or ethnic groups, that is what you are asking me?
Like, for example, the rulers of Kambata and the rulers of Inaria, the rulers of Kafa, what was the relationship, the rulers with the emperors or the Central Ethiopian state? What was the relationship like?
Most of these rulers, as you can see, they trace the ancestry from the Central Ethiopian government. For example, Kambata's ruling class, they claim that they come from Gondar. The same with Walaitas, the same with all these Kafas. Most of them claim that their ancestors come from the Gondar or from the north. Of course, this is maybe some sort of mystical or mythical view. But at least it is very, very important to notice this is a belief, culture, which they share, sense of identity, that they are not some sort of a strange part of Ethiopia, but at least the ruling class, which is the most important, prominent class, claims that their power derived ultimately from the ancestors who come from the northern part of Ethiopia. The secondly is really the Ethiopian system of government. The system that Ethiopia followed is those laid down by the Aksumite kingdom, and which means practically you incorporate people and bring them together so that they can live in peace and prosperity, but you do not interfere in their internal administration. You, of course, are going to appoint a general ruler who is going to run the country, who is going to inspect or supervise the administration in behalf of the central administration. The central administration does not interfere in the local affairs as long as the king, or what they call the Balabat, ruled the country efficiently and honestly, fair with fairness. It interferes only if there is injustice and unfairness. That is how the Ethiopian government ran the countries for a very, very long time since the Aksumite Empire. So this is the blueprint that Aksumite left behind. That was followed by Theodros, by Johannes, by, for example, many people emphasize Johannes ruled as a federation. No, that was the type of Ethiopian administration. Every locality kept their autonomy. The government never interfered. Even Johannes himself, even though he was a Tigrian, he realized that he is Ethiopian ruler. As an Ethiopian ruler, he did not, when he spoke as a king, he didn't speak as in Tigrinya, he spoke in Amharic, because Amharic since 1300 is considered to be the lingua franca of Ethiopians. As many people claim now, the Amharic is come from Amara. No, because Amhara itself is really what it meant is a melting pot of the Ethiopian society, because Amharic is really, it is a pidgin or Creole language of Ethiopian society who come from different parts of the country and communicate. So he spoke in Amharic because he was speaking to the rest of Ethiopia. And the same with Ago. Ago, of course, their language, I'm sorry, Zagwe. Zagwe were definitely Ago people, Ago rulers, but they didn't use Ago as official language, even though that was their native language. They spoke in Amharic, and they made sure Amharic is the Lisan and Negus, the language of the royalty or the administration. And of course, when the central government broke down, and Amharic, of course, became according to the 17th century German writer, the language, if you want to travel throughout Ethiopia, there are so many languages you cannot communicate with anybody because they don't go beyond the river. But if you speak Amharic, you can communicate in every corner of Ethiopia. So practically, what Asa Johannes did is re-established Amharic as national language. It wasn't Menelik. Many people say it is Menelik. Menelik simply accepted what Johannes introduced, and also the local community, for example, the Oromos around the Oromo Balabas, who were, for example, in western Ethiopia, like Ilbabor, Wallega, and other parts, they communicated in Amharic simply because that was the only written African language or Ethiopian language, even though, or what you call Amharic wasn't the language of the vast majority of their population. So there was this was really reinforced by economic integration and unity, because the trade from the south went through the center through Gojam, through Begamedir, went to the Red Sea, or from the Red Sea went to the Sudan. So it has to pass through all this process. So it's one political and economic unit, the country. And then the idea was a mythical belief that most of the rulers come from the center, sustained that unity. And of course, that unity was broken from time to time, but it was re-established as a result of that, as I said, external threat, or the need to be unified for some internal kind of rehabilitation. So that is what it was. There wasn't, as I said, really it was conquest, migration, intermarriage, interculturation. So that is what is a characteristic of Ethiopian society. So even, for example, Grany, when he conquered most of Ethiopia, he never had the ambition of creating a different state. He called himself the king, the Sultanate of Ethiopia. That means the kingdom of Ethiopia. He never intended to create a Hararite or Adal kingdom. Simply he kept the Ethiopian empire as it is, simply because he himself, I'm sure, believed that he was Ethiopian, because substantial number of his soldiers, of course, they spoke Amharic too.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether I answered your question or not.
No, you definitely did. It was really helpful. And you brought a lot of interesting points. I think this, you mentioned a lot about some of the responses have been in terms of the context of what is deemed as the Ethiopian state or colonization when it comes to certain rulers you brought up. So what's your opinion on a lot of politicians sort of downgrading or minimizing the authentic and the integrated history of the multiple different ethnic groups like the Kambata, like the Hadiya, in Ethiopia and denying them the antiquity and the historical links that they have with the rest of Ethiopia. What do you think the reasons are that? What incentives do they have in order? What kind of incentives do they have to spread like false history and to make it seem as if they were forced, they were never Ethiopian. Ethiopia was just belonging to two ethnic groups, and that the other Ethiopians, other ethnic groups, were only forcibly became Ethiopian like 150 years ago. What reasons do you think they have to spread these narratives?
First and foremost, Ethiopia have been always swayed away from its central focus because of external influences, and that has played a major role. Recent times, the external influences as a university education, as you can see, the university education, if you see your, the PowerPoint towards the end, if you do not mind, where it says anthropology. I don't know what number it is. Towards the end. Now you can go back where that one for all the challenges in new form. So our challenges and all this belief system comes from missionaries, ethnographers, diplomats, and foreign agents, radicals. This group, as I said, highlight differences, not communalities. Okay, and as a result of that, many people do not look Ethiopian history for what it is. What they see is, oh, your language is Oromo. Your Oromos do not really speak Amharic, but they don't notice that Oromos have been an integral part of Ethiopia, not since 19th century, since 19th century, but since 17. Since the beginning of the middle of 16th century. Still in the process of migration, the Oromos were part of the Ethiopian government because, for example, Emperor Susinus, who really is the founder of Gojam, couldn't come to power if it was not aided by the Oromos, because his army was largely Oromo army, and his wife was from Oromo. So practically those ruled Gondar for a very long time. It was a dynasty whose ancestor was Oromo and what do you call Falasha, I'm sorry, what do you call Beta Israel. And Susinus might have a very tiny portion of what we call Amara or other ethnic groups' blood in him, because his wife, his mother was from Israel, Beta Israel, and his father, of course, was from the ruling class, and his wife was Oromo, and of course, she has been Christianized, and her grandmother, I'm being told, she must have been Muslim or any other religion. So this is what they do not realize. Ethiopian by 18 and 19, the Oromos have been completely transformed from the original lifestyle into Ethiopian community, into Ethiopian society, simply because, according to, let me give you a very good example. In 1620, one of the greatest advisors and prominent personalities and also intellectual in the government of Susinus was one, what do you call I think his name is Tesfas. Oh my goodness! He was an Oromo man, but he was considered by the Europeans of the time as the greatest intellectual and the greatest personality in the entire continent. And he describes Amharic as our language, Amharic, our language. So this is, in 15 years after the Oromos we call migrated to Ethiopia. So that integration has happened very, very long time ago. Now, these missionaries, ethnographers, and diplomats, and European travelers who didn't do any serious studies tell us this uh, fabricating stories. What they saw, of course, they have to highlight the differences. That is what their job is. Otherwise, they do not have people to convert. And I don't even know, according to Emperor Johannes, what he said is, why all you European come all the way from Europe to Christianize this Christian country, and and crossing all Egypt, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, who need really Christianity. So this is the people who really brought these new ideas, and Ethiopians are, as you can see, they are always open to new ideas. As you can see in Ethiopian folk history, Queen Sheba went to visit Solomon, not because she admired his what you call beauty or what you call kindness, but because his wisdom. And the Ethiopians became Christians simply because the people who made Ethiopia Christian were refugees who have been enslaved, taken as captives. But since they have got new ideas, new ideologies, they got a very prominent position in the royal household. And eventually they preached Christianity and converted to Christians. And as I say, the Muslims came to Ethiopia as the first migration before the Muhammad's migration to Medina, simply because Ethiopians admire new ideas. So this is really part of our history, accept new ideas, the same what happened with these students of 1960s. They saw these new ideas, they didn't examine, but the world was different at that time. The world was divided into nationalities and to Europeans and Africans and colonialism and that and that. So the Ethiopian students, since they were immature, they were not grown up, intellectuals, they don't have Ethiopian sense of Ethiopian history. So they adopted all these funny ideas. They said, the people who speak Amharic are dominant. So they highlighted those differences, not similarities, commonalities, shared identities. So this is one of the most important issues. I think I have a couple of quotations, but I cannot tell you which one I have to. This is not the first time I also, for example, what Johannes said to the missionaries, why do foreign nations come here Christianizing Christians? They make trouble in my country and they are not wanted. Are there no men who are pagans to be converted? We are Christians like yourself, but with different forms. I find Western nations profess a great interest in Egypt. Why do not you European missionaries convert these Egyptians, your friends, to Christianity? So the Ethiopian rulers are well aware that European objectives is completely different from what they claim to be. Actually, we can see today with the United States and the Western world in the situation we are now. And so this is, for example, you can see that Wube, these are European missionaries for the first time in Ethiopian court. You can see, beware never again to treat the soil of my dominions. You and the English live in a cursed land and you covet our salubrious climate. One of you collects our plants, another our stones. I do not know what you are looking for, but I do not wish that it is in my country that you find it. So practically this is, Ethiopia is very much a wanted country.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, if you go to the next one, if you can find it quite interesting. Yeah. I know the tactics of European powers when they plan to occupy one's country by force. First, they send out their missionaries. Afterwards, they send their council in order to protect their missionaries. Then their battalions in order to protect their council. Do not think that I'm the Raj of India. I think I mentioned that before, but it still reinforces that idea.
Yeah.
What is the intention of the Europeans? If you can go next, we have seen that one. You can go to the next one. Okay. So this is what we do not know. This is what anthropology is. If you can see ethnology is to contribute necessarily to colonial methods, look at the last one, highlighted second, by leading to more rational exploitation of natural resources. So it is to help colonial powers understand the customs, the beliefs, the usages of the low society, of the local population, so that they can exploit rationally their natural resources. So our students do not know all these, what is this behind all these professors, lecturers who come to teach us at the university with very respectable title behind them. So this is one of the most important elements, of course.
Thank you so much. That was definitely very informative. I definitely learned also on this a lot. I'm familiar with some of these sayings Tedros and Johannes is saying, but I was not aware of what the Jazmach would be. I was not aware that he also had his own interactions with them, which I find very interesting. I think even to cap it off, some of the things that you were describing, I relate to a lot of them where there's these notions of like denying the antiquity and the historicity of and the significance of other ethnic groups. Like for me, for example, like I'm very well admire my history, but people will try to say that we weren't part of Ethiopia, we were forced to be part of Ethiopia, or that we don't have any links with that. But there's a lot of history of migrations and interactions. Basically, that's what we have: interactions, long-standing interactions, communications, moving from place to place, intermarriages. That's something that's a defining factor and a defining feature of our history throughout the very many different groups in Ethiopia. And I wanted to go back into an earlier map that that was in the slide. Even here, for example, I've noticed some of the names that you have here, even like Indigabtan, for example, or Wotajira, from what I see in here. I don't see these names anymore. They're not in Ethiopia anymore, and I'm just wondering like what or like a lot of them. Some of them I do recognize, like some of this, like Silti, Kabena, Alaba. Some of these are present. They're not as much known, but they're still present. But other names, they've basically like disappeared. So can you kind of just like in a really, really shortly, like briefly, can you describe what happened to a lot of these names and why we don't know about them anymore?
Some of them are still, for example, Silte is still there, Bereituma are still there. They are of course scattered. Kabenna is Kambata, so they speak Kambata language. They are part of the Kambata. Silte are still there. What is the other one? I can hardly see. In the Gabtan is very historical place. I think it is present since the 15th century. I'm sure it is in Gurage area, somewhere there. And so there are a lot of us Somalis, for example, we know about the Somalis. So Bushe, they are in Bushe, they are in Sidama area. So the Sidama people, many people do not know that the word Sidama is given by the Oromos to Ethiopian Christians. So the Sidama are not really ethnic group. It is a description of Ethiopia in Oromo language. So, but the people of Sidama are Bushe and other ethnic groups. I think the major two are Bushe and another one, I don't remember its name. So most of this group are Boren are still available, are still existent. So most of them are still there. Of course, Kabenna, many people do not know that Kabennas are Kambatas or part of the Kambata group. Because Kambata involved actually to today, Kambata is a very tiny place, but in the good old days, it involved as far as Kafa, as far as Somali boundary. So practically, it was a very large area.
Thank you for that. And lastly, I think for from my questions, at least the last question I have personally, what can we as Ethiopians of this generation and the next generation, what can we do to better educate ourselves on not just the history of like the emperors per se or like the central Ethiopian government, but what can we do to educate ourselves and make ourselves aware about the neglected and the forgotten history of a lot of the other ethnic groups in Ethiopia, considering the fact that we have over 82 different ethnic groups and so many more languages. What can we do to not just know about their histories, but also make ourselves self-reflect on ourselves about the narratives, the false narratives that goes on about them not being Ethiopian enough. There's a lot of, notions that other groups were forced, not just forced to be Ethiopian, but they don't look Ethiopian, or that they have no relationship with the other parts of Ethiopia and that they're just colonized, or they don't have any sort of links, where you've proven that that's not the case and that we all have links towards each other. So what can we do to better educate ourselves, to make ourselves self-conscious and be aware of the fact that there's so much more rich history that we have that is really unknown, not just by us, but a lot of even contemporary Ethiopians too. A lot of older Ethiopians are not aware about this. So what can we do to really educate ourselves about that? What would you recommend for this generation, or even in general right now as the like Ethiopians?
You are asking me a very difficult question. First and foremost, to develop critical mind. That is the most important. You can have PhDs, you can be teaching for years, but unless you are critical and look at everything with suspicion, Ethiopians are well known to questioning everything. So that is the most important one. The second one is we learn from our own experience, even today, that Ethiopians have people with exceptional achievement, but appalling failures. We are, in terms of land, we have got the bread basket of the world, but we are still starving. In terms of country, we got the most fertile land, but we are still starving. In terms of rivers, water, it is the richest in the world, but many people are dying of drought and what do you call lack of water. It is a contradiction. Really, it is a contradiction. The richest country in the world, but also being the poorest, it is really a reflection also of the rest of Africa. So what I advise the young generation is to be aware of their what do you call rich history. Be aware of their rich history. They played major role, greater what do you call role than any society in the world. Ethiopians played a major role to the black people, to the Arabs, to the Europeans. I'm sure many of you remember the land of Prester John, when Europeans were lost and couldn't find the sense of direction. Who really rescued them is that imaginary king, Prester John, who ruled Ethiopia. And as a result of that, in the search of the land of Prester John, many of you realize that they ended up not only becoming strong nations, but also discovering the Americas and the Australia. And so that is, it started because Ethiopia inspired them, to go and look for adventures to find the land of the priesthood John. So practically, they were humiliated by the Ottomans. The Muslims had occupied most of the land. They stopped their movement to the east from where they got the spices. So in order to overcome and defeat the Muslim power, the Ottomans, of course, they have to ally themselves with this powerful king, the priester John, who ruled Ethiopia. So practically Ethiopia has been an inspiration, not only for the Christians, but also for the Muslims too. When Muhammad was rejected by his own countrymen, and so his salvation came by sending his own very close relatives and followers to Ethiopia. And then, of course, those Americans or Europeans who discovered Africa and Europe, and Americas, enslaved Africans and dragged them through the ocean, who rescued them? The idea of Ethiopia. So we have to remember this rich history. Ethiopia practically is land of asylum or refugee, people who live law-abiding and caring, and the people who do not really tolerate injustice. This is what really we are missing. And this, as you can see, what is going in our own country, there is no justice. We lost a sense of our own identity, what makes us Ethiopians, okay? So you cannot imagine an Ethiopian without sense of justice, sense of hospitality, tolerance. So this is the characteristics of Ethiopia. So whoever preaches an idea different from that, really you can hardly call it Ethiopian, because Ethiopia is, we have to remember all the time, the Ethiopians are an outcome of internal dynamics through process of reforms, conflicts, migrations, external threats, and no single ethnic group dominated in state formation or administration. Ethiopia is multi-ethnic. Ethiopia itself is a multi-ethnic enterprise. I showed you how different rulers, different parts of Ethiopia created this. So they fought invaders under the banner of Ethiopianism. Never they fought under any ethnic appellation. So Ethiopia by definition means really a country of inspiration, a country of what do you call, anybody belongs to gain freedom. So this is what the spirit, what the students of today have to develop. Be aware of the rich historical identity and the historical role they played. And of course, there are a lot of things to be said. We shouldn't give very easily, swayed away very easily by what we have been told at school by these Western media, Western intellectuals. At the end of the day, you shouldn't forget that they are teaching us their own culture as superior, but Ethiopians, by definition, are people with very high sense of equality, okay? And this has been the characteristic of Ethiopian society. And whenever you can see that they fought colonialism, the defeat, the victory of Adwa is really what it means is that every human being, no matter how technologically superior of advance he is equal, no matter what. So that is what we have to remember all the time. So we have to be proud of our history and learn our history. That is what I will say, because this is I have a statement here. What says is, what is it? A nation that ignores its history is doomed to perish. An individual with no knowledge of history, of his own history, is as someone who lost his consciousness. That is what we lost. So that is what we have to recover.
True. Very true. Wow. Thank you so much. I hope for those who are listening, I hope they take your words to heart, and I hope that they start to make, especially about what you said about critical thinking. And I hope that's something I think that's something that really, that's something that this diaspora, not just the diaspora, but this generation and even the previous generation has really lacking. And it's ultimately, I think it's had pretty drastic results, and there's been a lot of consequences of that. But thank you for that. Thank you. You definitely answered my question. I'll leave it up to my colleagues if they had any other questions that they wanted to ask. My questions are done, but if any of my other colleagues here had any questions, you guys can go on ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask a follow-up question about what you said about the Sidama and how their name was given to them. And, I just want to ask because I thought that Ababare, the monk who recorded the Oromo migrations, he was based in Sidama. And I thought that, the name already existed since he was reported to have been based there.
Yeah, Abba Bahri actually was not located in Sidama. He was located in what we call today, what do you call Gamugofa. Imagine in Gamugofa at that time, if, Abba Bahri is one of the greatest intellectuals. Actually, I think is the only, what do you call anthropologist in Ethiopia, is the old Ethiopian history. And so he registered, recorded the anthropology, let me say, of the Oromo population migration. Actually, it is not migration, really, the Oromo population ancestry and what I call it anthropology. But in his description, the Oromos call the Ethiopians Sidama. Sidama means really whoever is not Oromo. He doesn't tell us what they call, for example, the Somali or no, but Sidama is very general term for Ethiopians.
Okay.
Who are Christian.
Thank you for that. I didn't know that. That's very interesting to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question? Yeah, we'll go into the concept of ethnicity on a future episode for sure. The ethnic identity and the origin of them, and the nomenclature of how they came to be and how it became politicized. We'll definitely talk about that in a future episode. Our next episode will definitely encompass a lot of the things that you said also in regards to Ethiopia's contributions to Pan-Africanism and Black excellence, in general. So we'll definitely talk about that, and I think they're definitely worthy of being addressed. But other than that, unless any of my compatriots have anything else to add or to say, we can go on from there. And do you guys have anything else to say? Any of my my peeps? No? Okay. Thank you so much for coming here, Dr. Larebo. I know it was not easy for you. You're a very busy man. A lot of us are definitely busy, but thank you so much for being here. It was very informative. I can speak for all of us here, from Tarik. We can to say that we definitely learned a lot. I definitely would say that I know a bit about Ethiopian history, but some of the things that you provided were brand new information for me. So I can't begin to explain how grateful I am, and how you took your time here to come and to visit us and to join us and to spread your knowledge and information for us. And I think that's something that a lot of our viewers and our listeners here are definitely going to enjoy. So thank you so much again for for having us.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed myself. I hope I have been understood well, and it was great. I hope you'll continue with this and incorporate other Ethiopians and bring the youth to your camp and educate them. So practically, you become the Saint Paul of Ethiopia now. Practically.
Oh, I don't know about
Thank you very much. And you told me to speak what do you call in one language which is different from Amharic. I don't know. Is that what you are intending to do?
If you can give a little bit, we often add a bit of a different language, an Ethiopian language at the end. So can you give us a little bit of what you know about from Kambatinya or Kambatisa, from what I understand?
Kambatisata magana sinone danam tujatet hujatayonte tumaheye.
Can you give us a little bit of translation for us?
Oh, I said, thank you very much. You are doing great job, and be well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Larebo. We really appreciate it, and we hope to talk again. I definitely want to keep in contact with you. You're a very person I definitely want to meet up. I definitely would love to have conversations with you about a lot of the things you said. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And for sure. And this concludes our episode for today. We'll definitely come up and we'll have new topics, and we'll start to interview more esteemed and highly revered individuals on our next future episodes. But thank you guys for attending. Please follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, and all our major platforms. Thank you so much, and we hope you have a good day.